moment is finally here. Kenne Bell Twin Screw Supercharger has arrived. Had a few issues with the packaging getting here on time, but it is finally here. It was made by Kenne Bell and ordered directly, so it took a while for them to produce the kit and make everything I needed. Of course, we've got a Kenne Bell book here, which has all the instructions on what we need to do to get the kit together and put it in. Of course, it comes with several different types of gaskets and all the things needed for the B-head 4-valve engine. And I also ordered a few custom goodies with it as well, so that I would have a little bit of customization going on as far as the amount of boost we're going to make. So, in summary, that's a pulley. But here it is, and I look forward to having everything together in a very short amount of time, and we could get the tuning started. Getting down to the intake, getting that off for the supercharger install. That throttle body should be fine. I've got the last of the bolts out. Just trying to make room for everything that we need. We need space for the supercharger to install, so I've got to take the upper plates off. I've got to take the IMRCs and the spacers out. I'm going to take the throttle body off that upper plate last, so I don't even need to do that at this point. I've got the plate loose, and there she is. Comes wide open, along with the intake itself. Things are looking pretty good. We're going to get rid of these spacers, and then we'll start getting down to the middle engine. Next, getting the lower intake manifold out. I've gotten the injector fuel rails out. All the injectors are out. The intake crossover is out, and now we'll just get this here. Some of these last bolts out. Yeah. Getting these lower intake manifold bolts out is fairly easy, but we're getting it all knocked out, and into the pile it goes. Who knows? One step at a time, whittling away at this. Hell, honestly, with the pace I've got going on here, I'll be done in short order. I may have to do some things for that intake bracket, and I may have to do something with this coolant crossover. I may do the aftermarket coolant crossover. I haven't decided yet. Once I get this zipped apart, it's bedtime for me. But once we get that lined out, I'll have this next segment to look at on the engine, as well as looking at the intake valves, the exhaust valves as well, on the underside for the exhausts, because I'll be pulling that stuff out for a moment. So we'll see what I got. Getting the last of those lower intake manifold bolts out, and on that one, give it a few zips. Ooh, that's wobbly looking, but we got it. Go ahead and pull this set of bolts out, and should get down to some IMRCs. I'll have to see if this intake will budge. If it won't, we may have another bolt, so let's check it out. Well, after much pulling and tugging, we finally got that intake off, the lower intake manifolds off. Found out that the previous owner actually RTV'd this directly to the head, so I'm going to have to do a full cleanup of this deck surface. I'm going to have to pull all of the gunk that's junked up in this area out. I'm going to have to vacuum the cylinders to make sure, or the head ports for the intake, to make sure that they're clear, so no debris gets in the engine. But shit, here we are. Alright, I got frustrated and came in with the wire wheel, so we basically just shaved all that nonsense off the surfaces. Now, next step is I've got to vacuum every single cylinder port. This is split port because it's B heads, so I'm going to have to suck every port down just to make sure there's no debris in the engine. I just went ahead and sent it when it came to this, cleared up all that RTV out of there. We'll clean the ports up a little bit more. Everything looks clean. we're almost ready to mount that bad boy on this car in a little bit. All right. Got the IMRC gaskets in. These are composite IMRC plates with a IMRC flapper delete. This is the lower house manifold for the supercharger. We're going to go ahead and get these parts on the car. I had to take all the RTV that was stuck on these off, used a wire wheel to just ever so slightly get all that gunk off, wash them out, degrease them really well, and I've got new Felpro gaskets on this side. Once we install it on the opposite side, there'll be a Felpro gasket there as well, and that'll be on the engine side. So at this point, we're about good to go. I'm going to put the intake manifold gaskets on the top and get the bolts for the bottom, and we're going to torque it down. Alright, so we're never playing around. We're doing this in the day and night. I've got the intake runners sealed off. And right now I'm just getting those main bolts in. We're going to torque those first, and then we'll get the rest of the bolts in after that. And then we'll be ready to apply the special gasket maker and put that supercharger up on top. Alright, so we got this in, got the bolts in. We're just getting about 10 foot-pound on all these lower intake manifold nuts. And there we go. Perfect. So next step, we're gonna torque the last two on the top, and we'll be good to go for the next step to get the blower itself mounted on the top. Well, we're gonna get on back into the apartment here. Go ahead and get that supercharger. One of the things you got to do to it is you got to go ahead and tap out the main plate. There's a main plate over here that's on top of the actual intake manifold portion, and what we're going to do, we're going to put the intake air temperature sensor right there, but you've got to tap it out for one to actually fit. It's going to come off of the Lightning. So the Lightning has obviously an intake temperature sensor that's on the bottom, and what that'll do is that'll give us the hot air intake temperature from the supercharger discharge instead of getting the temperature from the cold air intake, which will make a safer tune for it in the end. Alright, so here, this is a modification to the kit. I got a Lightning IAT sensor that's intake air temperature, because the kit stock does your intake air temperature at the mass airflow, and that's before the blower. But what we want is to actually get some temperatures from the supercharger itself, which makes our tune a lot more precise. So I'm tapping my way down into this. Shavings and everything are coming out, and once I get this tapped fully, we'll be good to go. So I think I'm about at the bottom of that thread now. We're just going to clean it up, and then the supercharger will be ready to mount. This modification is required. Alright, well, we've got a dry fit just to see how everything's going to line up. It looks like everything will line up just fine. Over here, checking the alternator bracket, and I need to make some provisions for the hood cut. I've got the hole for the intake air temperature sensor. It is tapped good. Looks like it came out very cleanly. Yeah, she looks real good. I'm excited. So next step, we're going to go ahead and apply the sealant. And then we're going to shove that beast back in there. It definitely weighs a lot, 80 pounds. So it's kind of heavy to get that in there, but we got it nonetheless. So we'll get that knocked out, and then we'll move to the next step. Well, it was quite the feat to get this supercharger to mount. The crazy part about this is the way Kenne Bell's got it set up. The fuel rails actually don't go on the way the instructions say to. One guy, as well as Matt on NASVT group, suggested that I take one fuel rail off and put this other fuel rail on the side after I mount the supercharger, and then go ahead and bolt it in. And that was what worked. The fit is so tight, it's probably less than a millimeter of space. Everything's honestly butting up right together, but there won't be any issues with the fitment. So if I ever want to change injectors on this setup, I'm going to have to do a lot to it. But we did get it in. I did a fuel pressure test. The fuel pressure looks good. I wasn't able to use my aftermarket fuel regulator, so I've got to make some changes to the base tune here. I had to go with a stock fuel regulator because of the space here. Even the stock one has maybe less than 2 millimeter of space. So I've got to see about a setup that'll actually fit in here to put an aftermarket fuel regulator in so I could turn that fuel pressure up. I'd really like to run 60 psi, just like I do on, here's the old girl, the Marauder. She runs 60 psi. The other Cobra ran 60 psi, and I like to do the same here for the atomization and, of course, the extended injector range. So, with that in, we've got that done. I'm going to let everything settle, and I need to get some bolts because, of course, I dropped some to mount the upper plate, but she is good overall. And that's pretty much all I've got. We're on to the next step, which is to get her running. And once I've got everything together, we should be able to get that done pretty quickly. Got to put the alternator back in and a few other little small things like that, but then she'll be good to go. Well, got a tropical storm working its way through up here. Got the supercharger in for the most part, trying to button things up, but we got to pause again because storm. Well, getting some of the last stuff tooled up in here on the sides. Injectors are plugged in, got the injector adapters in. Over here, got the IAC plate in. Finally, we're going to go ahead and add the rest of that oil to the supercharger. I hadn't done that yet, and we don't want to start her up dry. There is a dipstick on it that allows us to see how much oil we got in it exactly. I'm just gonna add, I don't know how much she takes just yet. Let's see what we get. Go ahead and put that stick in. Oh yeah. Now I'm just gonna run that down and then run it back up, see where we're at with things. Okay, got that out. Let's see where we're at on the stick. It's got a little read mark. Yeah, we're only at about the add line on it, so gonna have to add a little more, or a lot more at this rate. Feels like it might take the whole bottle, honestly. Got most of the supercharger setup piped in. Really everything is done except the intake. Of course, got that AccuFab single blade throttle body. It's a real nice throttle body. It definitely has a benefit on the positive displacement blowers. But on the 4-valve motors, it's constantly said that it pretty much holds no benefit to use the single blade throttle body versus the twin blade throttle bodies on the naturally aspirated setups, and apparently even on the turbo and centrifugal setups. I hear this a lot. I don't have any way of verifying this myself, but I mean, here we are anyway. I've got to figure out how to get the throttle cable in. Once I get the throttle cable in, matter of fact, I'm actually done at that point. I actually can't believe that we made it this far. There's some parts that didn't get documented directly on video, but hell, here we are. We're finally here. We should get to see this bad boy run. All right. We have gotten to the point where the intake is in. I need one coupling for the intake crossover for the idle air control, and I've just got to get the throttle linkage on. It's time to tune it. I'm going to need to put spark plugs in it as well. I'm going to roll with what I got for now just to get started, and hey, it's going to be time to send it. It's going to be time to send it. We'll be showing the data logs, we'll be showing the tuning, and I'm going to go over a few other things that are essential to getting the supercharger kit to establish. Hopefully it does make the boost we want it to make and not over that. I do feel it's possible it may make more, but we'll see once we get everything set up, and we'll be sending this bad boy out here anytime soon now. Well, after much ado, we're working on the base tune right now. I still got to get a few couplings in the right spots. Throttle body's a little out of place, but it's getting there. As we're seeing everything's opening up, I need to get more coolant in her, so I'll be back after I get that coolant in there. Alright, so I'll show you what kind of boost we're making here. Any tipping, I can't even get to wide open throttle. We're making a hell of a lot of boost for a stock block. Alright, so here we are. I just want to get in a spot where we could log that kind of boost that we're doing here. And you don't even really have to be flaring. Anything you do to get into it. We're instantly in boost pretty quick. I'm in 5th already. It's so retarded. Just for, you know, the type of setup it is, it's pretty basic. Downshift here. And what we're trying to do, we're just trying to get good data logs off of this. We're getting pretty decent data logs as it is. We're just trying to be moderate with the car. I don't want to blow the damn thing up before we even get it tuned in. Alright, you see it instantly. On the hit. I'm blowing boost out no matter what I do, and I'm creeping into it. Oh yeah, everything looks good now. Old Dale at Kerbo, he hooks me up real good on getting that exhaust leak fixed, which made wonders for even the startup. Just listen to her. She sounds exactly like she needs to sound. No stumbles. Idle is perfect. This is on the E70. Car sounds wonderful. So everything is about ready. We're going to do an interior cleaning, and we're going to finalize the tune. Just make sure everything looks good across the board. And then, hey, we'll wash her, lock stock, do a little waxing, and she'll be good to go. She'll be ready for the big time.